Welcome to the Brokers Open Podcast. Hey guys, this episode is brought to you by our friends at Palm Media. Palm Media is a boutique digital marketing company built for realtors by realtors. They help agents and teams dominate a target market with specific, tailored strategies. Everything from video, chatbots, landing pages, Facebook ads, database management, and coaching. And oh my gosh, it is way more affordable and simple than you could ever imagine. Call now for 100% free strategy session, whether you have a budget or not. Dr. Ben, my good friend, will make sure that you are heading in the right direction, building your presence online, or flat out crushing your competition. Before you spend a dime on marketing, door knocking, or sending out postcards, call Palm Media, 813-765-7706. 813-765-7706. Or click the link in the description below. Manifest your paradise. Howdy, people.
What's
Podcast
up?
Friday.
Podcast Friday. Here we go again.
Super psyched.
Yep.
I've been listening to a lot of other podcasts lately, and
Not as good as this one, though. I'm going to have to point that out.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
But when we get some good inspiration going, I forgot my headphones. Clearly,
Speaking of inspired.
Yeah. I can't even hear myself talk. Anyway.
Talk about always being in your own head. We're actually going to discuss that today, aren't we?
Oh, there we
Being
are.
in your own head.
That is the discussion. That is something that we get asked about a lot. That's something that, I'm pretty fond of subject-wise, and I know you
Agreed.
are.
Yep. Have to be. This business is too tough not to be.
Yeah. And I think this is square one. This is ground zero of starting a real estate career,
Yep.
having a good personal life, that whole thing.
Balance, yeah. Not just growth, but growth and balance.
That's
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
That's right.
And some people come into real estate and they've already got the right mindset. They've already got it kind of figured out and everything, or they think they do. And other people get in and it kind of overtakes them. One of the big things that we know happens a lot with agents is they'll come in and they have a sphere and they've got some business and they grab their license and they get up and running and they get going. A year later, they're worn out. They're exhausted. They come in the office. You can tell they just look like a different person.
Yeah.
They just look beat up. If you don't approach this the right way with what you're trying to accomplish, not just business-wise, but mentally what you're trying to accomplish, this business will chew you up and spit you out.
With a smile.
It will. I think it likes it. The business is like, I think I'm going to eat another one.
It's tough, too, because that mental aspect, for the most part, when you're in that high-end producer category or on your way to it, you'll understand that it is a very dog-eat-dog world, and that is not cut out for everybody. I did an interview yesterday with an agent who, wanted to come over, and, there is this sort of media presence and let's just say general public presence about getting your real estate license and then hopping straight into this because they're watching TV shows.
Oh, yeah.
And there is this false narrative. Oh, yeah. They put all this sexiness all over it.
Absolutely.
But what people don't realize is that's not real. That's all set up. All the deals are set up. Granted, I'm not taking anything away from those guys because,
Yep. They're making it happen.
And not only that, but they're killing it now.
Right.
Absolutely killing it. But I read a book on one of the $1 million listings guys. It was a gift that was given to me, and trust me, that wouldn't have been a book I purchased. But
you had to read it.
I did. I had to read it. I enjoyed the read thoroughly, and it's funny because the guy goes into detail about how before $1 million listing, he was just renting apartments in New York City. He didn't even do any sales yet.
Right.
And then there was a big casting call for that $1 million listing, and then boom.
And now he's
he closes $200 million a year plus by himself, and then he's got
average
a team
price $100 million, $2 million, $5 million. I'm sure has to be.
It's insane.
Right? Making bank. So absolutely. So what happened with his mindset? What changed? So how come he was not? How come he was just renting apartments to start with? How come some of these people get into real estate and they make the jump and then all of a sudden they're beat up a year later?
Yeah.
It's because they weren't looking at it like a business. They were looking at it like a job. You and I talk about it being transactional all the time, right? And
It's
so
like
if
a
people
flick of
look
a
at
switch.
that's right. So at some point you go, wait a minute, this is about the people inside the transaction. It is not about that transaction. As soon as they start getting wrapped up in that transaction,
You're right.
things start to explode. They start to get, emotionally caught up in it. Things fall.
You get anxious.
Yeah.
You get everything. I mean, you start questioning whether you're meant to be cut out for this business, and you even start to question sales in general.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I've been there.
Yeah.
I've been there. I'm
Yeah.
like, holy cow.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, somebody I met with yesterday. He sold a couple of businesses, and he's getting into real estate now, and he's trying to decide which sector of real estate to get into.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so whenever it comes to mindset, that's another big thing is, someone that has a great mindset for residential might not have a great mindset for commercial.
Yeah.
Might not have a great mindset for property management.
Right.
Might not have a great mindset for the auctions or all the other things that happen. So it's not just, can I get settled into this one particular thing and then start sprawling out and doing everything else, which a lot of people do.
Right.
I'm not going to say they do it at a high level, but a lot of people do it. And then some people just get beat up by it, especially like property management. You got to have a certain mindset with property management. You got to look at your business a different way. I think it's very difficult for someone to go from $1 million listing to a sitting at a closing table with a family that's a new family.
right.
The whole time they're trying to get something cleaned up so that they can get a property leased out. That's just difficult to do.
Yeah.
Completely different skill set.
Yeah.
Although your license allows you to do all of it. Completely different skill set, completely different mindset. How you deal with all the pieces and moving parts is different. That's the kind of stuff that burns people out.
Well, I tell you, let's dive into that a little bit too, because I spoke about this yesterday, ironically enough, as well. The idea of property management is almost daunting to some people, and I will tell you, if I had to redo my career, and trust me, I'm not saying that I regret anything in my career, because my path is my path.
Stepping stones, right?
Yeah, I'm grateful for it. Wouldn't change anything. But if I was a new agent coming into the business today, I think it's silly for realtors to overlook property management.
I agree.
The reason I say that is because a lot of people that I talk to, they want to jump into luxury. How do I get really good at luxury?
Yep.
How do I become dominant in a luxury market? And that was the same questions I was asking when I first got my real estate license. But what they don't realize is that a lot of people and a lot of high-end agents are trying to do that and are doing it.
Right.
And so what you're doing is you're going against the grain there. Whereas
You're going against people that are already experienced in the
yes,
grain.
and rocking it, and people don't realize in the high-end market you have to advertise more. There's a lot more money involved and a
Absolutely.
lot more
To do it the right
white
way,
glove
expectations
service.
are different. Yeah.
But the property management side as a new agent, if you don't have a sphere, if you don't have anything like that, I'll tell you 99%, and it might be higher than that, of realtors do not want to deal with rentals.
Right.
And they will openly give them to you. So it's the only time in a real estate person's career where you're able to network with people who want to rent their homes, but you can also network to other realtors and say, hey, give me all of your rental business. You don't want it, I'll take care of
Right.
it. You can't do that in sales. People, you go
100%.
up to another realtor in a different company and say, "Hey, next time you have a lead in your community, I'd like to have
The
it."
next listing, go ahead and give me a shot at it.
They're going to tell you to kick rocks.
Right.
But if you go to them and say, "Hey,
Absolutely.
give me the next, lease that you have coming across your plate," they're going to go, "Thank you so much."
Absolutely. And so speaking of a mindset and making sure that all of that is set up, because that's a fantastic point. Having a plan of how you approach it.
Yeah.
So, if you just pick up the phone, not that I'm against going out there and just getting started, right? Absolutely, people need to get started. I'm not a feather the nest kind of guy, right?
Yeah.
They need to get started.
Dive in.
But you also kind of need to think through that conversation with that person.
Right.
So don't just say, hey, I want your rentals. Why don't you send them over to me, right? Tell the person if someone decides to buy later, I'm going to send them back to you. Or I'll pay this much of a referral fee. Or this
Yeah.
is how I'm going to do it. Get with your broker, get with them, get with all the other people, and have a plan of how to do it. And then you're going to get so much exposure with so many people. I got a brand new team, two people, brand spanking new in the business. Both of them have sales backgrounds. They wanted to jump in, and one of the things that they jumped in on was a lease purchasing partner that we have.
Yeah.
And so they went to bed. So they came in and talked to me. We discussed it a little bit, and they went to one of the training classes and everything. And the one that's out on the street was out working. They're working contracts, doing a great job. The other one decides one night at 10:30, 11 o'clock that they're going to place some ads on Craigslist about this lease purchase. She wakes up the next morning, 17 leads
That's so sick.
in like a 2-day period. The next morning she had 6.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Gets up and she's like, what is this magical stuff in my inbox? And it all had to do with property management. It all had to do with getting up and digging in and having a plan of how she was going to handle that.
Yeah.
And so their mindset was, I want to generate. I want to help people in a certain niche that aren't being helped the way that they need to be helped. 2 of those, I know for a fact, out of that first group of 17 over the first few days, 2 of those are pre-approved. 2 of those are looking at houses.
So here's the interesting part about that, and this from the mental aspect, and this is part of the business that drives me crazy. It's you can't teach that intangible. So that person, that new agent, took it upon themselves to go out and to prospect on their own and figure out a way.
Yep.
And that is, I always say this, and it's kind of a cruel way to say it, but you eat what you kill.
Oh, yeah.
But it's so true. I'll get realtors as soon as they get their real estate license go, okay, business is going to come flowing my way.
Right.
And then I tell you what, those are the types of people that are out of the business so quick.
How many times have you sat down and interviewed with somebody, and we like to help. We like to help them generate, and there's lead opportunities and everything. How many times have you sat down and somebody said, so, I got a letter in the mail, I just got my license, or I talked to a friend of mine, and I talked to a buddy that's a broker, and they said that they're going to give me leads. What kind of leads are you going to give me? So I like it that they're asking. It's smart that they're asking the question, right? But what they're basically saying is, I'm judging your value of us working together.
Red
Was that
flag.
flag red?
Red flag.
Yeah. I'm judging the value of us working together on what you're going to give me, and then me keep the lion's share of.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And that is just, it couldn't be further from the truth about the industry. And if you're going to have somebody come into the business like that, you're going to be coddling them the whole way through.
Right.
I mean, I'm telling you verbatim, somebody came into my office yesterday and asked me all about that. So
100%.
if I'm going to be paying for, the MLS dues, and I'm going to be paying to come into your office and doing these types of things, what are you going to give me?
Right.
You owe me something now. And I don't know.
That's like somebody that opens a McDonald's and says, "Hey, I'm gonna walk in and I'm gonna work at the register. Not to be mean, but I'm gonna work at the register, and I know you've got the overhead, and I know you've got all of these other things, and you're gonna advertise to get people here and all that kind of stuff. But how come I'm not making as much working at the register as you are?
Yeah.
It ain't okay.
Yeah.
It ain't okay."
All right.
So, but again, back to the beginning. That's a mindset thing.
Yeah.
So when they're getting in the business, instead of them saying, I'm going to come into the business, I'm going to look at this as a business. That's how I want to approach this. I'm going to look at this as a business. Instead of them grabbing onto it that way, they're looking at it like a job.
Right.
That's very dangerous in this business.
Right.
That's also what's given way to some of the things that are, the interrupters, whatever you want to call them, the disruptors or whatever it is. That's what's given way to that.
Yeah, sure.
The agents that don't want to go out and connect and be connected with their sphere and do the things that they need to do and generate the business and be in front of people when people have that need, the ones that want to sit there and wait for somebody else to hand that opportunity to them, that's what gave way for online leads.
What a perfect segue. That's what the underlying tone of what you just talked about, though, is one word, and it's fear.
Oh, 100%.
Okay? That is the underlying tone. So fear in all of this, and this is, whatever you want to call it, transversal to everything that we can talk about. And I'm reading a new book. I know that you already read this, and it is a fantastic book. A colleague of ours gave this to us. Shout out. So
thanks, Renee. Thanks, Jill.
Yeah, big time. Fail Until You Don't by Bobby Bones. I had known who Bobby Bones was just a little bit through the radio waves, and I love country music.
Yeah.
I didn't know that he was wrapped up in the comedy stuff. I didn't know that he was wrapped up in being an actor and all of he's got his hand in the pot in a million different things. And I sat down one time and just started this book and could not put it down.
Yeah.
But one thing in particular sticks out. Just ironically, we bring this up right now. This is straight from his book. Oftentimes, people won't try things because they're afraid to fail. But my philosophy in life is all about winning by losing.
Yep. So who else said that? Something very similar to that. It wasn't phrased as well. But when we had Ben Spears on here, you remember him talking about failing as many times as he possibly could
Yeah.
in as short of a period of time as he possibly could? He said he wanted to do whatever he could to fail as much as he could because that way he could learn from it.
Right.
That's absolutely huge.
I love that.
Yeah, it's a good book. So
But that underlying fear is something that gets in the way of not only here's my biggest fear is not living up to my potential.
yeah,
That is my ultimate biggest fear,
yeah.
like by far, and it
Mine's
scares the
spiders.
shit out of me.
I fucking hate a spider. I
See,
can't.
I'm cool.
I
I'm
can't
cool with spiders. I can't
No,
take
man.
snakes.
I'll tell you what.
I'll
we
come
get in
over
a
to your
bad
house.
situation.
You call me about
No,
spiders.
my wife will do it. My wife will kill the snake and the spider, dude.
Yeah, I hate snakes. Spiders are fine.
I could care less about a snake.
Spiders are easy.
No, man. They're furry and they'll kill you.
You're talking about like some tarantula
No,
out in the.
Every spider is furry and every spider will kill you. Don't fool yourself.
We gotta get a little clip of that.
They bite you in the jugular. You're done.
Oh man! All right, so let's go back to fear. Everyone has a fear, and many fears actually, but including spiders. But it's important for as.
But I like Spider-Man.
Yeah, of course. He's awesome.
Right.
Great.
Did you see
movie
Sony
series.
finally did the right thing with the MC Universe?
No.
Yeah. So Sony and Marvel got together because there was a big deal with Disney and Marvel and all that kind of stuff and everything, and they finally coughed up the rights to him. I think they were just holding him hostage, but now he's going to be able to be in the universe the way that he needs to be.
We are totally derailed right now.
I was afraid we were going to do that.
Yeah. So.
Anyway, sorry.
What are we thinking about?
So back to the book. I had to get off the spider topic.
Yeah, it's freaking you out. But fear can be paralyzing. Fear is something that can, take over people's lives and they don't even know it because even growing up,
100%.
Growing up and even getting into your career path, you're always taught to push your fear away, right? Never mind it. You got to move forward. But I think it's important, and based on reading things, listening to other podcasts, fear is something that comes up quite a bit, and fear is something that you need to understand, be able to compartmentalize, and be able to digest. Until you
100%.
do that, that fear will hold you back from being the real estate agent that you want, that luxury specialist that you want to be, the owner of brokerages, whatever it might be that is your goal.
Right.
Fear is the only thing holding you back.
100%. Fear is the absence of joy, right? So what people are afraid of too these days, a big part of it is everything is captured, right? Everything is forever now, right? So they're afraid they're going to do something's going to happen. The next thing you know, it's on social media or somebody got it on video or somebody whatever. So it's almost like that what they were afraid of before is now compounded. It's exponential.
And permanent.
And permanent. And so I think that a lot of people are afraid to step out and do the things that they need to do because they're afraid that it's going to be capsulized and held in time.
Here's the thing. That's an egocentric thing. And,
Oh, yeah.
and I get that way sometimes too.
We're all guilty of it, yeah.
But here's the thing about other people. Nobody gives a shit.
They don't.
Like, you fall flat on your face, somebody's not going to just sit there and,
100%.
They're worried about themselves. They're not worried about you. So stop worrying about making mistakes. Make 1,000,000 mistakes because you're going to be the person that succeeds.
Absolutely. So I think this is because you just touched on this. This is, of course, an important time to talk about this. So a mistake is only a dangerous thing to be afraid of if you're not going to learn from it, if you're not going to grab onto it. And that's extremely important in real estate. So whenever you sit down with a seller and you tell a seller, hey, look, you're hiring an expert here. So part of the reason why they're hiring that expert is because of the experiences that you've had, because of the mistakes that you've made, because of the mistakes that other people have made, because of the mistakes your broker has made and your company has made and the industry has made. All those mistakes compounded, if you're paying attention, allow you to help that seller, that buyer, from hopefully making that same mistake.
Right.
In this business, you have to have a mindset that mistakes are going to happen, things are going to fall apart, things are going to blow up. I'm going to learn from the ones that have. I'm going to listen to the people that have an idea of what has already failed, what has already fallen apart, what has already happened. I'm going to learn from that, and I'm going to leverage that to make the transaction better for the next person I deal with, for this person and every person moving forward.
Right.
That's just, I mean, we all know this. We're not being preachy here. Everybody knows that you have to learn from your mistakes. So how do you do that? Part of it, I think, is you have to journal some of that. You have to write some of that down. You got to have a place that on a regular basis you're putting, hey, this is what happened, and this is how I. This
You
is how
got
I
to be
figured it out.
self-aware, though.
You do. You have to.
Self-awareness is such
100%.
But people don't want to look themselves in the mirror and actually see the truth. People want to look themselves in the mirror and, hey, trust me, I'm this way too.
I look in the mirror all the time. I'm like, hey, this.
Hey, yeah, it's nice. The beard's nice. But people need to give themselves an honest look in the mirror, and I'm all for, boosting yourself up and giving yourself maybe not necessarily false confidence. I'm not sure what the word I'm looking for is, but you know what I'm saying.
Machismo, yeah.
But you need self-awareness in order to go down that route and be able to learn things, because if you're not true with yourself when you make those mistakes, and even when you have your successes, but more so when you make your mistakes, you're not going to be true to yourself and you're not going to learn from them.
Right.
Period.
So we know that some of the people have listened this far in the podcast and they're like, okay, I know all that, you too. I got it. We got that figured out, right? How do we make sure that how do we help them make sure they have the right mindset? How do they set their mindset? How do they make sure that they keep the mindset that they want to have? So if somebody comes in and says, Matt or Justin, I know I really want to take it to the next step and everything. What do I really need to focus on? How do I get some of this crap out of my head in order to be able to move forward?
Right.
Okay. So this might be a little bit long-winded, so cut me off if we run out of whatever's in the camera over there. It's not tape.
Battery.
I almost said tape. Right.
Yeah.
We don't have to. Okay.
Yeah.
So we've got basically lines of code in our head. Every second we're absorbing a whole bunch of information. Right. The thing about fear is if you absorb all of that and you let that line of code run in your head and you don't pay attention to it, it's going to become the dominant program that runs your day.
That's right.
So what you have to do on a regular basis is you have to be cognizant about putting new lines of code into your head, is what I tell people.
And
okay?
the interesting thing about fear, and this is perfect, what you just said was like spot on. But the thing about fear is that fear always comes from the outside in. Fear will never start inside of you. Fear starts from your sphere of influence, from your family, from a bad memory.
Yep.
Fear always will start outside and come in. Your fears, you're not born with fears. You're learned fears.
Right, and fears are typically from the past and typically of the present or the future, not really of the present.
Right.
So if you're afraid right now, it's because of what you're afraid is going to happen, or you're afraid of what has happened before and it's going to repeat itself. That code that we were talking about writing, that's what you have to be able to focus on right now and overwrite that. So that's what Bobby Bones does, what he talks about in his book. He actually likes being afraid. He likes being nervous.
I love that too.
So what he did is he reprogrammed what fear meant to him. He reprogrammed what, that nauseous feeling meant to him. So as those lines of code are being written in his head, what he's doing is he's saying, okay, that's not fear like spider fear. Right? That's fear like, oh my God, something great's about to happen.
That's right.
So he rewrote that in his head. And so whenever I talk to people, that's what I try to get them to do is when you've got that anxious feeling, when you can't move forward, when you're struggling, when you're just having a hard time, rewrite what that fear means.
Right.
So a perfect example of this would be if I picked up a spider and I pet it, and it looked up with all those freaking eyes. It looked up at me and just, looked like a little puppy dog. That might change how I would look at spiders, even if the spider didn't necessarily look at me that way.
Right.
It's how I perceive that to be in my head.
From past memories.
From past memories, and that would allow me to have a different future. So when someone's afraid to pick up the phone and call, okay, so when someone's afraid to,
memory.
That's right, it is.
They're afraid of being vulnerable.
And they're afraid of what they think is going to happen in the future, either because of what they've heard from somebody else's experience. So what you have to do is you have to reprogram that. You got to teach them to pet that spider.
That's the whole premise behind Bobby Bones' book is facing your fears head on, and then once you're past facing that fear, all of a sudden it's not so bad anymore.
Yep.
So I mean, Matt and I fail all the time, and that's something that I am proud to say. And I'll share a story with you with everybody where I had
with our 8 million viewers.
Yeah, it will go once I share this.
Right.
I mean, I had a paralyzing fear moment where I do a lot of or I have done in my past. I still do a lot of public speaking at different venues. There's just one venue in particular where I was completely unprepared, and I thought that I was prepared, and I bombed it, like completely bombed it in front of a lot of people.
Right.
And right before I was about to step up on stage, it hit me that I hadn't prepared like I should have.
Right.
And I owned that immediately, and I knew that, but I knew that this next hour was going to be the longest hour of my entire life. And so that hour felt like a week to me.
That's tough.
And I will never forget that feeling, because I actually had to travel to this venue by myself. They put me up. I mean, I was no keynote speaker, but I had a good presence in this conference.
Right.
And I completely flopped, and it was
That's tough.
tragic. It was embarrassing. But at the end of the thing, I get done, and I honestly, it was a borderline panic attack to the point where when I got off stage, I felt like I was going to fall over.
Right.
I mean,
just faint. Yeah.
completely, it was an out-of-body experience. When I was going through this panic attack while I'm doing this public speaking event, I'm going through the whole thing,
That's
and
tough.
I don't remember anything about it.
Yeah.
I was completely mentally blocked. I was sweating. I couldn't even hold the microphone straight.
Right.
But when I got off, I realized, what's the big deal?
Yeah.
I'm still here. I'm still alive. I'm still healthy. I still have everything that I'm grateful for. I get to go home and do what I love. Guess what happened from there on out, though, for me, was I understood.
Oh, yeah.
I tell you, that was the best learning lesson for me that was a complete fall on my face. People are probably like, oh, Justin, it probably wasn't that bad. I'm telling you, it was horrendous. I mean it. I mean, I flopped on the biggest scale. There were 100-something people in the room, and I couldn't have bombed it worse. But I promise you one thing. Had this event never happened, it would have in the future
That's exactly right. That's what I was going to say.
And here's the thing about
Not
it
a matter
happening.
of if, but when. Yeah.
It won't happen again.
Yeah.
It won't happen again. And that's why I go through the motions on, okay, we need to be prepared for this. We need to make sure that we outdo this, because it is my personality to...
Oh, absolutely. You're that 1% that it's got to be a little better, got to be a little better, got to be a little better, got to be a little better. And I love that. Absolutely.
But, dude, I flopped big time. And honestly, even retelling this story brings back a little bit of that kind of uneasy feeling, and that motivates the hell out of me.
Yeah.
But I'm telling you, stepping off that stage was...
I bet.
Oh, boy.
I bet.
Oh, man. Because you feel like and Bobby Bones talks about it in his book, and that's why it was so present.
Fabulous.
He flopped big time.
Yeah.
He did a comedy routine, and nothing landed,
Yeah.
and everything went wrong.
Yeah.
And he got off that stage in a full panic. He had an anxiety attack on stage, whether people knew it or not. I think that when people have anxiety attacks, thank God that was like really my only like anxiety attack moment.
Right.
But you learn to control these things, and then you get better at them, and you prepare better, and you learn to. There's a lot that goes through it. But the point of all of this long-winded story is that if you don't go and just do it and put yourself out there, you will never know, you will never grow, and you're never ever going to reach your potential. If you just sit back and hope that things come your way and don't put yourself out there, you got one life to live. Fucking do it.
You got to have those stepping stones. If you don't have those stepping stones, then you're never going to get to the place where there's a great view. Mm-hmm. You have to continue climbing onward and upward, and as you do, the view just gets better.
Yeah.
And so, I have people, and so do you. They come into the office all the time, and not necessarily just newer agents. Sometimes it's experienced agents, but they're in a little bit of a panic, right? So, whenever I talk through people with what's going on, very seldomly when they walk in, do I say, here's the answer.
Yeah.
And that's what they want.
Figure it out yourself.
Yeah. And most of the time it's because they know the answer, right?
Just got to guide them that way.
That's exactly right. So, and also in talking through that, whenever somebody's in the middle of it, whenever you were on stage, if I could have walked up and said, hey, Justin, it's all going to be good. The next time this happens, don't worry. You're going to be really prepared for it. You would have looked at me, and probably never remembered that we had that conversation. You wouldn't have been able to look straight, and you would have shortness of breath and all that kind of stuff, because right then is the most difficult time to absorb that lesson.
Yeah.
However, if you can slow yourself down and absorb it right then, those lines of code that we were talking about,
right,
that is the most impactful code you will have.
Yeah.
A couple of lines of that type of code are going to override all that other fear code that you have.
Right.
You can have millions of hours or millions of lines of hours and minutes of fear code. And when you can settle things down and focus in that minute, that blows up all that other code. It almost negates it because it allows you to build on that code instead of having to replace it, which is what he talks about.
Huge breakthrough.
It is, absolutely.
But when people get that butterfly feeling, that uneasy feeling, that, oh man, like this is either going to go one way or the other, it's that kind of fight or flight type of mentality. And I encourage you to seek out that feeling. I love that feeling. I love that uneasy feeling. When I start getting butterflies, I know I'm onto something good.
Yeah.
Or we're onto something good.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, that when I know that when that happens, I'm in.
Yeah.
I'm in. But if that doesn't happen for me, I'm not in.
Right.
I
get
really.
it. So whenever we talked about, I did karate for a long time, and so I'm the bigger guy, 6 foot, 200 pounds, more than that now, but 200 pounds was always the big karate guy,
Yeah.
right? So I was always the one that got beat up and got thrown whenever we did demonstrations. We would have, 8 or 10 skits, and regardless, in all of those skits, I was the one getting beat up. So I didn't get to go out there and show out and be awesome and be the one that was the winning and the champion one. I had to go from one to the next getting beat up. Mm-hmm. I loved it because the crowd got into it, whether it's a kid or whether it's a woman or whether it's, 3 of us trying to jump on one person or whatever the deal was. All of those skits, the crowd loved it and they got into it. You know how hard it is to remember all that?
Right.
You know how hard it is to fall the right way?
Right.
You know how hard it is to get up at and take the right turn and all that kind of stuff and literally move from one skit to the next, to the next, to the next? With me, the biggest thing that was the biggest release is after you did all of that, that's whenever we would go into brick breaking and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
All that would do at the end of that was solidify what the audience thought they saw ahead of that, because I was always decent at the brick breaking part.
Yeah.
So all it did was solidify the rest of that in the audience's mind. So I knew that if I didn't do a good job on the first part, all of that built on, no matter how good it looked at the end, all of the rest of it did not have credibility. Mm-hmm. That taught me to be so prepared, getting in front of people, and to be so calm and level-headed and be able to settle down and focus. I don't know if I could do half of what I do right now had I not had to go through those iterations.
What a cool, that's so cool.
Had I not had to go through getting beat up the right way,
right,
for lack of a better way of putting it. So everybody goes through that pressure and that panic and all of that. Because if you fall the wrong way, if there's a wrist lock and you fall the wrong way, you got a broken wrist.
Yeah, it's
right?
a problem.
Yeah, and not
real
to mention
consequence.
Absolutely,
a real one, not like
100%.
Oh, somebody hung up on me.
Right. Yeah. And so all of those things, knowing I figured it out then, but didn't have somebody coaching me through the mindset.
Sure.
That's why why we're doing what we're doing right now.
Right.
Is because people have these experiences, and if they're going to grab onto some of this and listen to some of this the way that they need to, they're going to be able to get the benefit of what we had to do in a way that they're not going to have to go through that.
Right.
They're going to be able to grab onto that. So how do they build that right mindset?
Right. So
what do
going
they do?
back to that.
Yeah.
So the biggest thing, and I actually did a video blog about it this morning, a vlog, and the biggest differentiator between people I see succeed, I mean, you can talk about success at the highest levels in any business, in any personal life, in any sport, or we could just be talking about, making that next jump. The people who make that next jump, and the people who make it, and the people who don't fail are the ones who do not ever quit, period.
Agreed. 100%.
If you do not quit,
100%.
I promise you, and I say I promise, and I mean that, if you put one foot in front of the other every day, no matter how hard you get hit down, okay, and you keep moving forward, you will succeed.
Absolutely.
It may not look like you're succeeding at that time. In fact, it looks like, and it feels like, you fell off a cliff.
Right.
You did not. This is a learning lesson. Scrape yourself off, learn from it, put the foot in front of the other.
100%.
Because the people who are not making it are the ones that are on the 1 yard line and don't realize they're on the 1 yard line. They think they're back at the 20.
100%. You remember Allison Levine and her talking about being at the top of Everest?
That
right?
was trippy, man.
So, and I think we've mentioned this before, but if not, so they would have oxygen on, right? Yeah. And They had to breathe, 10 times
Per one step.
per one step.
Yeah.
And the wind would be blowing so hard that they couldn't even tell if that foot was in front of and how far in front of the other foot it was. So for hours at a time, they would have to take 10 oxygen breaths to take one step. Breathe 10 times and then take a step for hours on top of hours. And then they would be able to see where they were trying to go and not be able to get there.
Right.
Can you imagine that?
No.
Being
I
able to
can't
see
even-
something 30 yards away and know that it's like walking to your car right now, 30 yards away,
That's nothing.
and spending 4 hours and not getting there.
Right. I mean, that's real consequences,
It
too.
is.
I mean,
Oh,
what if you
absolutely.
have a breakdown? What if you decide to quit there? What if you have a panic attack?
100%.
Guess what? You're dead.
Right.
We don't have those consequences in
That's
real
right.
life.
That's
I mean, not on that level. I
Right.
mean, you got to be doing, adventure sports like that, or you got to be, in battle or something like that, where you really are on the line.
Where everything's, yeah,
But we don't have an excuse. We just
to
don't.
do the right thing. Absolutely.
There's no excuse. If she didn't have an excuse to just stop and turn around,
They would literally go by people that did not make it, bodies that could not be taken down from the mountain because there wasn't the energy and everything to be able to do that, right? So that's real consequences.
how easy would that have been to actually start breathing, kind of having that panic breathing
Oh, yeah.
feeling, and then all of a sudden you run out of oxygen. But you
Right.
have to. There are so many variables in play. You just got to keep it all together. It's incredible.
Yeah. So being able to just settle yourself down in that moment and do the thing that you need to do,
Right.
whether it's prospecting, which a lot of people are afraid of prospecting, right? Whether it's that listing appointment. Some people are fine at getting the appointment and sitting down and having a conversation or having the conversations that lead to the conversation with the seller.
Right.
But they don't want to sit down in front of the seller.
Right.
Or they don't want to pick up the phone. Something bad just happened on the inspection, and they don't want to pick up the phone and make that phone call.
Right.
Or something's absolutely falling apart at the 11th hour, right? Something happened
Yeah.
on a transaction last night with one of your folks.
Yeah.
That today was supposed to be closing, and last night the buyer just says, forget about it, and the sellers have already moved, not moved local.
Right.
They've moved way the hell away from here.
Right.
And that was a situation where they needed to sell. That's not an easy phone call to make,
No.
but you're not having to take 10 breaths to take a step, and your life depends on it.
That's right.
Do what you need to do.
Here's a good reminder for people when they start to have those fear moments, or when you start to have that anxiety attack, or when you start to get, nervous beyond belief to where you can't think. The important thing to do, and this is an exercise that I use quite often, is that remember that everything that you're building up in your head prior to whatever you're about to do, whatever this event is that's coming up, is going to be way worse than actually when you step in and
Right.
actually do it. So the lead up and the anxiety of what's going to happen here in my future is 10 times worse than actually when your boots are there.
Right.
So if you're starting to feel that way, if you're getting that anxiety attack, or you're getting this nervous feeling that's starting to overrun you, the thing that I like to do is just sit down, calm myself, and then you do your reiterations, right?
Right.
You got this, man. You've been here. Even if you haven't been here, you've been here.
Refocus what you're thinking. You can't just let the thoughts run through your head of what if.
Right.
Again, that goes into you're taking the past, skipping over the present, and putting yourself in the future. That's actually what's happening.
Right.
So you're acting as if whenever you're in that difficult situation, whenever you're in that panic situation, okay, I got to present a counteroffer, and the seller, it's just going to explode and blow up. And so you're thinking in your head, here's how that's going to happen, and I know that it's happened in the past. Instead of sitting in right now and saying, here's the outcome that I want, how do I have that outcome happen?
That's right. That's right.
So being able to be focused on the present, taking the experience of the past, releasing the fear from it, focusing on the present, and saying, this is exactly what I need to do.
And understand that when you come out of that win, lose, or draw, everything's going to be okay.
Absolutely. Yeah.
There's nothing on the line there. If you're nervous wreck about going into your first listing presentation,
Yep.
or you're a nervous wreck about going into your first, luxury listing presentation, guess what?
Or if you've made a mistake.
Yeah, own it.
Yeah.
Who cares?
Right.
What's the worst that's going to happen?
Right. Get with your broker. Get with your broker.
Call Matt Vaughn. What's your cell phone number?
Yeah, we're going through a tunnel right now.
Oh, sorry. Break it up.
But absolutely, get with your broker, have that conversation, say, what do we need to do? How do we make this situation better?
Yeah.
And focus on right now what's going to allow you to take that next step. Take those breaths and take that next step, right?
So in life in general and in real estate, this is something that has, pushed me to new limits, is always pushing that envelope. And as a kid, I was completely overcome by fear all the time. I would not leave my parents' side. I mean, even up to the point of like ridiculousness.
Really?
I mean, seriously, yeah. I was afraid of the outside world. I was afraid of other kids. I mean, it sounds silly, but I'm telling you,
No, it doesn't.
It was wild. I mean, I was a completely different person as a child. And then it just kind of hit me one day, and I don't remember when that day was, but it was an epiphany going, what's the worst that's going to happen? So you just put yourself out there, constantly push the envelope, try something new, go out and learn new things. Yeah. What's the worst that's going to happen? Like, really?
You just reminded me of I don't know when the last time I've thought about this was. So when I was youngest of six, right? So I got to see and hear a lot of things really early,
yeah.
right? Okay.
Yeah.
So that means scary movies and all that kind of stuff. I was watching scary stuff.
Yeah.
Either I had to sit in a room by myself while everybody else watched it, or I would watch it with them, right? Mm-hmm. I was terrified of the dark for a very long time. Mm-hmm. Terrified of the dark. One of my brothers, not the oldest brother, but the next oldest brother, Rob. One time, I don't remember how we even got on the conversation, and he said, "So what are you afraid of?" And I said, "Well, there's this and there's that and there's all of basically run through these things." And I was tore up about this mm-hmm. because I couldn't I did everything I could to avoid being in the dark.
Right.
And he said, "Why don't you just sit in the dark for a few minutes and see which one of those happens?" And it took me probably 2 weeks. And that's exactly what I did. I sat in the dark.
Wow.
Everything completely lights off, all that kind of stuff. And it was not long. Normally, up until that point, if I had to be in the dark, it was a panic attack because mm-hmm. all I was thinking about was all those things that couldn't happen, all that fake crap, right? And how afraid I'd been, the buildup of how afraid I had been up until that point. Getting in the dark because I knew go to bed, you got to turn the lights out and like somebody else isn't there, somebody's at a football game and everything. I'm like, holy shit, I'm going to be in there by myself.
Right.
So there was all of that build up to it, and then I got to that point and did it, and what he said allowed me to look at that moment instead of the past or the terrifying what I thought would happen in the future of it.
Right.
And what he said allowed me to look at it in that minute, and it wasn't like it just magically went away. But exponentially, it got better.
So think about that as an example. As an adult, it's funny to look back and you say, oh, you're afraid of the dark. That is such a childish thing. The people that are saying that on the inside realize what you just thought about and what you just said, because that afraid of the dark thing is the same stupid thing that you're afraid of right now. Think 100%. About that. Like, really.
Whatever it is.
The stupid listing appointment that you got to go on, whatever, the presentation that you have to do, the speaking, whatever it is,
same thing.
The interview that you got to go to for a job interview, it is the exact same thing as being afraid of the dark.
100%.
Step in, own it, and take it over.
Sit down.
Period.
And it might not get perfect right then, but you'll take the step of getting it better because you're owning that moment.
But think about it like that, though. It's interesting to think about that dichotomy between, adulthood and childhood.
Oh, yeah.
And how really similar our fears are. And we grow up and we're taught that those things are silly, the boogeyman and being in the dark is such a childish thing to be afraid of. But, that job interview that's coming up next, that's legitimate. Real. You can be afraid of that. No, it's not.
Yeah, I know. I agree. So here's the other thing about fear, and I don't remember where I read this. That this might be a Neville Goddard thing. Okay. So if you're afraid of a lot of things, you're a little bit afraid of a lot of things. But if you're afraid of one thing, you're terrified of it.
Yes. Oh, wow.
So what people do is either they convince themselves to be a little bit afraid of a lot of things, mm-hmm. and they spread that fear out, or they convince themselves to be really afraid of a singular thing. If you want to splinter that because you'd rather not be that afraid of that one thing, then you have to step into that with the correct mindset.
Right.
And so, of course, he talks about having a joyful mindset as a big part of what he discusses.
Right.
So you have to make a joyful approach at whatever it is that you want to splinter if you have that one main fear. Okay. Now, so we're talking about this from a real estate perspective. Okay. I'm not talking about other stuff with it that has to do with people's lives for the most part, right?
Yeah. Please understand that. I mean,
Yeah.
there's legitimate terrible things that happen in our lives, and terrible things that happen to people in their past, and by no means are we talking about
Right.
those serious things and terrible things that can happen to people.
Right.
That's not the example that we're using.
Right. Yeah. We're talking about the real estate and how to have that correct mindset in that and how to move forward from that. So either you're going to spread those fears out over a whole bunch of things, because we're built with fear, right? So fear is, again, the absence of joy, and we'd love to be joyful all the time, but if you can't, then that's when fear creeps in. So the way to stifle that is by not allowing it to build up into a singular point of fear.
Right. So Bobby Bones, again, let's go back to this. Do I enjoy bombing out? No, of course not. But I've learned far more from my failures than I have my successes. And then he goes on to say a little bit down the way, quote unquote, I do not want to waste a failure.
Yep. How huge.
I do not want to waste a failure.
huge.
I was
Yep.
like, yes,
That's awesome.
that's awesome.
Yep. So so what's the name of the book again?
Fail Until You Don't, Bobby Bones.
Yeah, I think that was his second book, if I'm not mistaken. He's got another one. He actually opens the book up in a way that was a little bit more personal to me. But absolutely fantastic book.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I mean, it's awesome. I mean, there are so many. I have more scribbles in this book than I've ever had in any book, and I'm not saying that because I love these types of mindset types of books, but
Yeah.
The key in anything that we do, whether it's personal life, real estate, doesn't matter. The first key to everything is mindset.
100%.
He breaks down, the best way to think about mindset is, from all the studies that have been done on mindset, there's two categories of mindset. It's the fixed mindset and the growth mindset.
Right.
And so that is a good way for you to break down two categories of mindset. If you have that fixed side or that growth side, that could be something that we go into on a whole nother deal.
Absolutely. That's hours worth of talk.
But that's a good way to kind of separate the way that you're thinking about it. But,
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
And so we talking about mindset, mindset is what creates our thoughts, right? How we look at things is what creates our thoughts. Those thoughts are what create our feelings, and our feelings create our actions, and our actions create our results.
Right.
So if you don't start with that correct mindset, especially about real estate, if you're trying to get up and running, or if you're trying to take that next step, or more importantly, you're stuck in a certain place with what you're doing with your business, and you want to shift and take it from maybe being a transactional job to a actual business. If you want to make that change, if you want to make that shift, start with the beginning.
Yeah.
Start with your mindset. Go back and look at what it is that you did that got you exactly where you are.
Yeah.
Because if you don't change that,
Right.
then it's not going to. It won't change how you feel about it,
Right.
which won't change the actions about it, which won't change your results about it. So it's that whole lead measure, lag measure conversation. So start with that. Start with the
I think that starts in the morning too. I mean, this
Agreed,
is something that I've always said to myself on a daily basis when I have the gift of lifting my head off the pillow is the beauty of real estate, and take this if this works for you, but the beauty of real estate is the idea that today you have the ability to change your life forever, and you have the ability to change somebody else's life forever
100%.
for the better. Okay? And that's something that when I wake up every day motivates the hell out of me, is that I have today could absolutely change my life. Also today, I could actually help change somebody else's life for the better.
100%.
And that motivates me.
100%. And so Dewey and Alan talk about that all the time. I mean, a lot of the people that we listen to, the podcast, and the different speakers that we hear and that we're around on a regular basis, the friends, the people that we're around, our spouses, all of them want us to be focused on helping people move forward. We don't surround ourselves with people that aren't that way.
Right.
That has to be a big part of your environment.
Right.
If it's not a big part of your environment, then you're not being intentional about what you're trying to accomplish.
Right.
So you don't need to be isolated. You need to be in an environment that is really a collaborative environment that helps you move in the direction that you want to move, right? That helps you make that mindset go forward, right? So
Nothing's guaranteed. I mean,
Nope.
there is no guarantee in life, and today is the last October 4th, 2019 that you're ever going to have in your life.
Right.
You know, do you want to look back on yesterday and say, you know, I could have done better. I didn't lead up to my potential.
Right.
No, that sucks.
Yep.
So just bust your ass every day.
Grab onto it and do it. Absolutely.
Who cares? What happens if you fall flat on your face? Get up the next day and do it again.
That's right. Move forward. Absolutely. So hey, look, we talk a lot about speaking and everything. We've got a speaking thing coming up, right?
Yep.
At the beginning of the year. So we'll make sure we get some more information out there about everybody. And some of it's going to be mindset, of course. We've got a great
It'll be
keynote
mindset.
speaker,
And
right?
It'll be
It's gonna-
really good. This event in January is going to be a really good kickoff to the year for everybody in
100%.
2020. I know
Yeah.
that everyone's doing their business planning probably this fall, which you should be doing. If you're
Absolutely.
not, you need to be planning for 2020. But what a good
And
event
beyond,
this is
yeah.
going to be to kick off the year.
Right. So going to that mindset thing, right? So the mindset, this is going to help adjust that, move it in a certain direction. If you want to be in that environment of people that are looking at the same, looking at things the same way, we'll make sure we get that out there. Jason and Ben, there's the brains behind all this. We'll make sure they get that rolling, right?
Cool.
Very good.
Appreciate y'all.
All right. What up?
See ya.
Yep.